Good morning. What day is it? What day is it? What day is it? Hump day! Mike. I think it's getting to be haircut time. Just got done reading The Richest Man in Babylon again. It's only the second time I've read this book, which is really not a good thing. I should have read it much more than that. I read Richest Man in Babylon, Beating the Dow, One Up on Wall Street, and another book as I was getting ready to graduate law school, and I had a plan and very much prepared myself to take care of my finances when I graduated from law school, and I followed them, and I followed those plans, and it worked. It worked fantastically. So let's do just a quick review of that, because some of you might be, we're coming out of this. We're coming out of the lockdown. We're coming out of COVID. You can see the end in sight. For sure by the fall, everything in the world's going to be open, but it looks like really by June, everything's going to be open, and things are really starting to open up in like April. So, I mean, we're getting within 60 days of things changing. The numbers are dropping. Herd immunity is starting to happen. So if you are one of those that's in a big pile of debt as a result of this, you lost your job or your business has been shut down, like mine. My business has been shut down since March 17th. The courthouses have been shut down since March 17th. So how do you come out of this? And let's remember the teachings of The Richest Man in Babylon, because it's a great book. If you haven't reread it recently, read it. It's an easy read. It's something that you can do in a couple of sittings, and the lessons are timeless, which is exactly why it's stood the test of time for however long the story has been around. So, number one, the first 10% of all money that you make, you pay yourself. It goes into savings, no matter what. You figure out how to get it away and put it into savings. And there's a lot of good ways to do this. 401k money, if you have access to that, you should absolutely take advantage of that, because almost always the company will match part of what you save, so it's free money if you do that. So if you have a 401k, if you can put money into an IRA, whole life insurance policies. I'm a believer in life insurance policies. I think whole life insurance policies are a very nice conservative investment vehicle. They're nothing fancy. They're nothing spectacular. They are not Bitcoin, but they work, and they force you to save, because you've got a quarterly premium that you have to pay, or every 6 months or every month or whatever, especially if you're young and just getting started. So the first 10% of every dollar that you make, every dollar that comes across your desk, goes into savings, and it goes into a very conservative savings. Do not start throwing it into Bitcoin. Do not start throwing it into GameStop. Do not start throwing it into all of these, fly-by-night piles of craziness. It goes into something very, very conservative that will stand the test of time, that will weather the storms that are yet to come, that's going to be there no matter what. Then you take the next 20% and you use that to pay down debt, and you pay it down in a pro rata share. And if you're in a situation where you're hiding from the phone and you're hiding from your debtors, which, hey, I've been there. When I went through my personal development process, when my building went down, I still had a landline, thank God, because I'd come home and there'd be 12 messages and I wouldn't listen to them. And, so we've all been there, especially if you're an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, you've been there. That's the coffee. And so you call them up. Call up your creditors and tell them that this is what you're doing. And you're going to find, especially like credit card companies, you're going to find that the majority of them are very, very open. If you've got a plan, they're, almost all of them are going to be very open to this plan. So you take the next 20% and you pay them down pro rata, and figure out, like with credit card companies, if you threaten, BK, or if you just call them up and you say, this is the situation that you're in, they'll almost always freeze your card, stop charging you interest, or charge you only a little bit amount of interest, and put you in a situation where you could pay it back. So 10% goes into savings. It goes into something conservative. 20% starts paying down your debt, and then you live on the remaining 70%. And you do that until your debts are paid. When the debts are paid, then you shift into this. The first 10%, give it away. Why? Why would you do that? Because it teaches your brain that there's more than enough. And you'll stop coming from a place of lack, and you'll start coming from a place of plenty. And people that have developed financial freedom come from a place of plenty, and they had that belief before they developed the financial freedom. They looked at the world and said, there's plenty of money out there, I just need to go get it. So the first 10% you give away. The second 10% still goes into your savings. You never stop doing that. And then the third 10% goes to debts if you have debts. And if you don't have debts, then have fun with the third 10%. With the third 10%, go buy the Louis Vuitton, or go buy the high-end Nikes, or whatever. Go buy the fun stuff that you want to go buy. And then live on the 70%. Shaquille O'Neal was on CNBC a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about young athletes signing these big contracts. And the guy that was interviewing him said, what advice would you have to these young athletes signing these big contracts? And Shaq, and I love Shaq. I think Shaq is awesome. And he says, can I borrow a piece of paper? And the guy kind of hesitated for a minute, and he goes, just a piece of paper? He goes, yeah, can I borrow a piece of paper? Sure. And so he hands him a piece of paper, and then Shaq holds it, and he goes, can I tear this? The guy says, yeah, you can tear it. And he goes, so here's what you do. And he tore the piece of paper in half, and he says, this half is half of your money. You give it to somebody, and you give it to somebody that is going to responsibly invest it and manage the money. You don't invest in your family's business. You don't invest in your friend's restaurant. You don't do any of that. You give it to a money manager who has a track record, who's trustworthy, who's conservative, and you have him invest that, and then the other half of your money, that's what you live off of. He said that's what millionaires do. Now here's what billionaires do. And he took the half that he still had in his hand, and he ripped that in half. And he said, billionaires take this half and also give it to the money manager. So he was saying for these guys signing these big contracts, take 75% of that money and put it into savings. And he said, this 25%, this is what you go live off of and have fun and buy the houses and buy the cars and buy the Richard Mille watches and whatever. Grant Cardone says this: take all of your money and put it into vehicles that pay you money back. That's rich dad, poor dad, right? Now, if your interest is in real estate, then that's how that works. Now, interestingly, if you read The Richest Man in Babylon, when they talk about your investments, they say you can spend the great-grandchildren. So have your investments, have children, reinvest the children. Children have grandchildren, reinvest the grandchildren. When the grandchildren have great-grandchildren, when you're on your fourth generation of level of investments, now you can start spending. That was what they said. All of these will work, okay? All of these ideas will work. But the idea is, if you're in a big pile of debt right now because COVID has done that, then get a plan. And the old Richest Man in Babylon plan will work, and it isn't just about, see, what people think, well, I'll start saving once I get out of debt. The reality is you'll never start saving. And you got to start now. Doesn't matter how old you are, whatever it is, you have to start now. When would now be a good time? So take all that, use it as a way to start paying yourself, and no matter what you're doing right now, pay yourself first. Shaq said 75%. Grant Cardone says 40. Richest Man in Babylon says 10. Whatever it is, it's got to be a minimum 10. Up to 75. If you can do 75, that's awesome. But either way, unless you start paying yourself first, you're not going to get to financial freedom. Have a great day, everybody. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.